sitting on the john, essentially you were going downhill. Now, I should have known even then that essentially the consequences of living in Lakeside, particularly at that time as a very young architect, that this would be filled with many, many challenges. At any rate, we enjoyed that immensely. I remember our youngest daughter, however, making comment about the bare ceiling and the fact there was no insulation. And of course it had aged over the years, so it was quite dark. And as a consequence, she made the comment, "Daddy, this isn't like a Holiday Inn." But at any rate, we always enjoyed their being here. Wilfred Bachknight advised me when he realized that perhaps we were thinking of getting a cottage here in Lakeside to definitely look above 5th Street. He said the properties below 5th Street, particularly 4th Street, will have to be paying a higher real estate tax, which I do believe is definitely the case now, and probably will be very much in the future. As a consequence, after looking at many pieces of property with Smith Realty here, we decided here was this cottage at 644 Walnut. It looked terrible. The porch, which is also a second floor porch, had been torn off because it had become dangerous. A gentleman by the name, well, I won't use the name, because there might be some relatives here. But nevertheless, he had quite a notorious reputation as a rum runner. And it had even been written up, by the way, in history books, particularly about Kelly's Island, where he was involved in the death of one of his compatriots, essentially, when he fell off the boat after the feds went after it. But that's neither here nor there. We decided to purchase this property. I looked at it. I said, the lines are still good. It's constructed on a real stone foundation, as it is, by the way, still today. And most, as you know, the older cottages were really just built up on posts. At the most, they did not have a real true foundation. But nevertheless, I decided to make an offer on the cottage. And I offered, now get this, $12,000. And they bought off on that. We purchased that cottage for $12,000, and we still had the outhouse, and we still had the shed in the back that at one time actually was a room for 2 horses, and we still had the well. We still have all 3 of those items still in existence on our property. And I'm always proud to show it off to people because that's what they call board and batten construction. In other words, it does not have true walls to it. It just has boards that were set down in the dirt, and there would be what they would call a batten strip that would go over the joint in between. Now, there's still quite a few cottages here in Lakeside that are board and batten construction, some of which have been covered with siding, but many of them still exist. At any rate, we started remodeling it. We had no heat because there was no heating system in it. There was a pot-bellied stove. However, the old gentleman had allowed the chimney to become completely clogged with soot and grease. And as a consequence, we could not use that. So that was one of the first things that we had to take out of the cottage. Evelyn and I had to sleep on a mattress that we brought in on the floor. And it so happened at this particular time, I was still flying back to Europe or to the Middle East just about every weekend. But I made a point that I try to conduct my business in the various countries in Europe or in the Middle East so that I could get on a flight and come back Thursday night so I could come up to Lakeside on Friday, and so I could work the weekend on the cottage and leave Sunday night again to go back to Europe or to go back to the Middle East. I never regretted any aspects of that. Frequently, my children, well, Debbie she says, "You're crazy, Dad." She had started at UT in Toledo at that particular time. And Debbie was somewhat honest. And that's the reason the name of the cottage is Bedlam. Bedlahm. Just essentially because they said, "Well, this is a crazy house." I said, "Well, yeah, I come real close to that." We've loved every aspect of it. And now we have lived up here, although the newspaper, and that's my error, because I told Gretchen when she interviewed me on this, that we came up here in 2012. In reality, we've been here now full-time, year-round, since 2008.
Wow.
So we're pretty soon going to be up here 10 years. But at any rate, we've loved every bit of it. And that's the main reason we've come to Lakeside.
Obviously, if he spent a career traveling throughout the world, he had lots of choices of where he would spend his retirement, and he picked Lakeside. The next question for all of you is, what spot in Lakeside is most dear to your heart and why? Let's pass it down to Earl, and we'll reverse the table then.
That's a difficult question because there's so many. But I think after I thought them over real hard, I thought, my wife has been dead almost 14 years. But I can remember we used to love to get in our cottage in the evening, light a fire in the fireplace, and both read a book. That was very peaceful, very serene, and that's one of the memories that I like to remember most.
When I have a chance, I want to say, when Gretchen asked me to do this, it's very hard to say no. She works so hard on all these wonderful programs. But when she told me who else was going to be on, I said, "Oh, okay, I know those guys." So I first knew Earl when his wife volunteered to be a hostess when our house was on the home tour in '95. So I remember that, and since then, as long as he was at shuffleboard, I'd walk across there in the mornings. "Good morning, Mrs. Strickler," for a long time. And this guy has, among his other talents, you may not know, he is a super duper wallpaper hanger. In '93, we remodeled our cottage, and I gave him a real challenge. He hung wallpaper for me, a vaulted ceiling, plaid wallpaper, it didn't quite always match, you know how hard that is. Beams in the ceiling that he had to go through. He did a superb job, and it's still absolutely perfect, and it's almost 25 years old. And he is amazing. So as a special spot, I thought, well, that is really hard to pick, and I decided probably my front porch. I'd love to sit on my front porch, and I'm lucky to be able to see the lake and the monument and talk to people going by. A lot of people stop to visit, and it's a wonderful place to read a book, and have a cup of coffee or whatever, and I just love it.
Thank you for mentioning about the front porch. Evelyn says at our ages, we should enclose our front porch. At least screen it in. Our front porch has been the magnet for many, many people, particularly the people in our neighborhood. They love to visit on our front porch. Lakeside, of course, at one time, was primarily a community that had front porches. Of course, you know, we can have terribly hot summers. And of course, that was the only place that you could go. I mean, air conditioning hadn't even been conceived of in some particular times. And very few people might have had fans, but fans, as you know, don't quite do the job when it's truly hot. So as a consequence, we have resisted enclosing the porch. And I know quite a few of you still do have an open porch. And I'm sure you appreciate that. The most important thing that's always been to Evelyn and I are the people that are here in Lakeside. We love the 20 years that we lived in our home that we designed and built in North Carolina. And we love the people, but it wasn't the same. It was never the same. We could always look forward to the fact that we could be back to the Lakeside. And now that we live here full time, we really appreciate that. Because strangers, total strangers, because it's open, not too far from the sidewalk, and when you're on Walnut Avenue, most people now, particularly parking up at the top, have to walk up and down that sidewalk. And Evelyn and I, we greet them when they go by, at least with just a very pleasant hello, or have a nice day, or are you having a good time, or did you buy something at the sale this morning? Just recent conversations like that with perfect strangers. And amazingly, I now know of a person who's very dear to Evelyn and I that is perhaps selling her house to a family that we spoke to. It's very, very important that essentially you still treasure your porches.
I'm going to ask now, and all three of you can choose not to answer any question from this point on. I told them that the first two were the only two I wanted everybody to respond to. They didn't have anything they particularly wanted to say on any other question. They could just shake their heads no or say pass. So the next question I want to ask about is, what are your observations about how evening entertainment in Hoover has evolved over the years you've been going to Hoover programming?
I guess maybe I thought of it more this summer because we've had so many musical groups, maybe from the 50s, 60s. And I don't know where I was during those years, but I guess I missed a lot of these people because I just don't seem to know the music, and I guess I don't appreciate some of these groups, and especially when it's very loud. And my ears probably aren't as good as they used to be, and it's hard to get the words. So I don't know if other people have that problem, but I find that. I happened on to, I save everything, which I shouldn't do, but I had an 87 program I happened onto, and I thought it was so interesting. One of the big things that year were Ferranti and Teicher. Remember them? I think they were here more than once.
They were.
They were fabulous. And we also had stars of the Lawrence Welk show. And I thought, gee, too bad we can't bring those people back again. But I guess not. But I think it's amazing that they can have the variety of programs that are arranged. And so I never would miss a program because you didn't know it might be really good. And if you didn't go, I said, oh, you should have gone last night. It was wonderful.
Well, I imagine quite a few of you last night were at Hoover Auditorium, and you heard the expressions of appreciation to Keith Addy. And really, I always appreciated Keith, not just while the time he was doing the program,